I have a little dollar sign painting that Andy Warhol gave to me in 1982, and he said, "Oh God, gee, Nick, oh God, you're starting to earn some money now. That's really great. Here's some more."
If you could spend a moment with some remarkable people and discover what their life sounds like, what would you ask? Welcome to Are We On Air? An audio encounter. I'm Armand Fay, and each episode will feature one conversation with an inspiring friend of mine who will share with us the soundtrack to their life. Wow! Hello, beautiful people, and greetings from sunny Mykonos, and welcome back. I am so sorry it took us this long to get back on air with you, but it is totally worth it. New amazing interviews, new events, a new video series, and more behind the scenes, a brand new website coming very soon, and a new shop, and on and on and on. So let's get the party started with none other than our favorite 80s pop band, Duran. I met the guys a good few years ago when Andre Balazs had asked me to play a party at the now infamous Submerser in New York City for what I believe I remember was an after-show party for Duran. That's where Nick Rhodes, founding member, songwriter, keys enthusiast, and I connected over what he calls groovy sounds. Well, fast forward to November 2022, where Duran got inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and had kindly asked me if I'd like to play at their after-show party, which of course I had to say yes to. Not only that, but we finally got to open the doors of the newly renovated Bar Marmont that Andre and I had worked on for so long. Well, what can I say? I was on fire. The mixture of finally getting to play on my beloved sound system with the Duran celebrations, plus the Gucci/LACMA people crashing the party in their beautiful gowns, just made this beautiful cocktail of extravaganza, which inspired me so much that I played one of my best sets ever, if I may say so myself. Anyway, back to Nick. Oh, what a gentleman, an arts enthusiast, and a man with stories for days that I could listen to all day long, and I'm sure you do too. From their humble beginnings in the UK, to David Bowie, to Warhol and company, to what special room service the Chateau offered back in the 80s. You can now find amazing video content and BTS shots, aka behind the scenes, not only on our Instagram, but on our YouTube and our TikTok page. Well, I succumb to the pressures of the non-ordinary world. Anyways, let's get undone. All right, Nick.
Right.
Welcome to Are We On Air?
Thank you. It's very nice to be here.
Yeah, we're here in London at the Chiltern Firehouse. We were together 2 weeks ago.
Indeed.
Celebrating your career, your life.
Well, yeah, it was interesting, that trip, because the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame was at the center of it, where they'd inducted us. I'm not quite sure what it really all means, but as Jean Cocteau very famously said, first they ban you, then they put you in a museum. So I guess that's what happened, but, better in than out.
Well, it was definitely a milestone, let's put it that way. I'm sure the whole band was very proud, and it's an achievement.
Yeah, look, I think it's always nice if you have been together for a long time to have someone stamp the card and say, yep, you've earned that, well done. It's, I guess, a school prize, isn't it? It made everyone smile, and for sure there is a remarkable list of names of people that are in the Hall of Fame, so happy to be alongside those.
40 years.
Yep, 42 and counting.
I think you and I met, what, 10 years ago?
Oh, at least, yeah.
This was the second gig I played for you guys.
It was indeed. Well, the party you did in New York was one of my favorites.
Really,
At
yeah.
the Submerser.
Submerser back then,
Yeah. But it's like, your energy, actually, when you're behind the decks is kind of infectious because it just keeps going and keeps going. You think, he's not going to notch it up again, is he? And it just keeps going.
One more gear. There's one more gear.
It's true. Never run out of gear, someone. Never.
No, it was a fun one. I have to say,
This one was a gem.
A big one.
Yeah.
I have to say, this was probably one of the best sets I played in years.
Well, it was fantastic. Congratulations. And let me tell you, everybody who was at that party wrote afterwards, which you don't always get after a party, but everybody was just writing saying, oh my God, that was actually like a proper party, an old school party where people just let go and had fun as if there wasn't a horror in the world when you look out of the window. And sometimes that is amazing when you can do that. It felt like times long ago. So yeah, it was a great mix. You know, as Steve Rebell always used to say, it was like mixing a salad, right? Putting all the people in Studio 54, and I need a little more of that and a little more of that. Whatever everybody did, we got it right because it was exciting, fun people from all kinds of different industries, a lot of young Hollywood, music people from the event, and fashion, arts. It was great. Really, really enjoyed it.
It just speaks to me so much. Being eclectic in general, I think, is the key.
For sure.
Like sonically, but also how to curate a room and an atmosphere. I think more than anything.
Well, and also, let's face it, the venue, how great is that? A lot of people haven't seen it yet because it's been used for virtually nothing, right? So that was exciting. I think finding a venue, especially when someone like yourself and Andre are involved in making a room and an atmosphere for people that's magical and new, when people arrive and they haven't been there, that's exciting.
It's been sitting there for 4 years with COVID and everything, and it was the first time that I actually got to play in my own little space.
Wow.
So for me, I think that's why I was the extra mile as well. I found 10 more gears.
Wow.
I think that's what it came all together. So yeah, it was definitely one for the books.
Yeah. There's the sense of excitement in the room was unlike anything I've been
like
around for a long
party
time.
In the 80s, like Careless
yes, a little.
and
Yes, it did remind me a little bit of several places. There used to be a place called Kinky Galinky here in London that you would have loved that, but that was a little more crazy. Everybody wasn't dressed as crazy in LA as they were at that, but that atmosphere and all the different people that used to be in the room was quite extraordinary. And then the early days in New York, of course, Area.
Tell me, what was Area like? And a shout out to Sean Houseman here as well, and Eric Good.
Well, and Eric Good for sure, yeah. They created what was at that time the state-of-the-art, coolest club in the entire universe, as far as I know. There was nowhere else like it. You'd go there and every night was different. It was the collision of art, fashion, design, and music in the most desirable form imaginable. I always remember speaking to Andy Warhol one night. He said to me, gee, where are we going? And I said, no, I'm thinking of going out later. He said, oh, I guess you better come to Area. And I said, oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. He said, oh, well, I'll see you, but I'm going to be behind glass, or whatever it was he'd said. What he meant was that he'd agreed to do an art piece there. I think it was during the pop art show. Probably was the thing when they had the giant Brillo boxes and whatever they were, Tide boxes on the dance floor, and they had people behind windows, people doing ironing. I can't remember it even that clearly. All I remember is walking in there, and it was like a surreal dream. And sure enough, Andy was there, and he kept his steely cool, but I have to say I laughed more with Andy than I did with most people. Whilst he could put on any public persona, he was one of the funniest people you could ever possibly meet. Yeah, we spoke about it afterwards, and he said, oh, it was so difficult with all these people staring all the time. He said, I just stared back at them.
Because in real life, he wouldn't be that character. He would actually be
It depends who you knew, which Andy you knew. I'm sure lots of people knew different Andys, and for sure I didn't know him in the 60s and the 70s, when maybe he was different in life. What I did get to know, which I'm very grateful about, it was a remarkable human being who created some of the most striking, important art images of the 20th century, and whose ideas were way ahead of everybody else. Andy loved Cocteau, Andy loved Duchamp, but he also loved Jasper Johns and Rauschenberg and Franz Klein and Jackson Pollock too. He understood art. He loved the Italian Renaissance. His knowledge was so deep, and anyone who thinks otherwise is really entirely wrong. He respected what people had done, but he managed to carve out his own area unlike anyone else. He came through commercial work by doing those illustrations for fashion magazines and those extraordinarily beautiful gold shoes that I always clamor after. Then he figured out a way to make money from art by reproducing it in bigger numbers. But I think it would be completely wrong to ever think that Andy was just driven by money. He was driven by trying to find the most perfect vehicle and to try to create the most amazing piece of art that he ever could. There's not many people that really did better in the 20th century. It's a fact now that him and Picasso are the best-selling artists. But there was periods in his life when people doubted him in the 70s. Now we all look at some of those pieces in the 70s and say, oh my goodness, the Maus, the hammer and the sickle, whatever they are, and even some of the portraits, even some of the celebrity portraits that are not thought of as being his finest work. All the time I spent with Andy, what I really learned from him was how to look at life with amazement and curiosity, and to make your judgments, to curate it properly. And that's really what he did, which is why he is the giant figure, even after he's gone, that he is now. I could keep talking about it for ages and ages, but really, if you look at what he did, honestly, Andy invented reality TV. Look at those movies that he made, just staring at people, just turning the camera on and looking at what they did and how they behaved. My personal favorite's Beauty Number 2 with Edie Sedgwick, but it could be any of them. It could be Sleep. It's just something that he inherently understood about our behavior and the way we were, and about American consumerism, that is unparalleled with any other artist.
What an answer. Wow. And we should play some of the videos.
This is not just another pretty face, but Beauty Number 2, Gino Pizzette. As the first angle of the triangle, Edith Sedgwick. Out of frame, Chuck Wine.
Well, it was really something, and I missed Studio 54 because I was a little too young for that one, but I did get the Palladium, which was also really, really special. Those places, when people get them right, just, you know, even the ones from the past, you read about things like the Stork Club, and you think, I bet it was really great there because somebody thought about everything, about the lighting and where the tables were and the music and what the waiters and waitresses looked like. And when people get that right, that's, you know, it's something that you can't really repeat easily in life. The things I went once to a nightclub in Berlin. I think it was called the Hospital or something like that, or the Operating Room or something. Incredible.
When was this?
It was sometime in the 80s, I think. But yeah, I do still remember the 80s, funnily enough. But
we're going to get to that in more detail.
But what was super great about it, I've never ever forgotten, is that we went in and it was really late. It was sort of 2 a.m. when we arrived, and we ended up there till God knows what in the morning. And the whole thing was done up like a hospital operating theatre. So they had these incredible-looking German waiters and waitresses in beautiful white outfits, like doctors and nurses, and literally the nurses with the hats on. It was all proper fetish stuff, and high heels, and they were bringing the drinks on trolleys that came over, and the trolley was like a hospital trolley. But on top of it, all the mixers for the drinks and the things, the straws and things were all metallic and looked like implements, and they put them on the table. And over each table, I hope I'm not glamorizing it from my memory, but there was a hospital operating theatre light over the table that you had on dimmers. And so it was quite...
I mean, the creativity to come up with these ideas. It's very area-like, actually.
Yes,
I mean, that's what Sean Houseman did, right? Like,
Yeah. But it was so great. But I wanted to go the next time I went back there, but moment gone. Gone, yeah.
Damn. Do you remember what music they were playing?
Do you know what? Specifically, no. It was whatever was super groovy at that time, but it wasn't as if it were. It would have been sort of pre-serious hip hop. So it was electronic 80s mixed with a bit of earlier stuff, but it wasn't. Things then weren't as segregated as they are now in a lot of ways. I think there are people like yourself that can play anything and mix them up, but it tends to be that you go to a club that plays more of this or more of that.
But even though like today's generation, Gen Z, of course, the lines are blurred, right? Like it's like pick and choose. I call it the pick and choose generation. Like through your playlist can be anything.
Well, I do think that one of the great things that's happened with the internet and with streaming and with YouTube and Vimeo and all of the other things up there, obviously Spotify, is that it's made younger kids more aware of different types of music, and it's made things more balanced. They're not afraid anymore to say, I really like that heavy metal track. It's cool. Listen to that riff. It's really great. Whereas before it would have been, but I like hip hop, so I'm not going to listen to that because it's on. Yeah, exactly. And I think that's gone away. You're right. The lines have really blurred. And that makes things so much more exciting.
Way more interesting. Going back to being eclectic, more colorful. We want more color.
Yeah, definitely.
Talking about kids, when you were a kid, what was the significant moment that changed you, that turned you into becoming an artist, and what was playing?
Well, actually, that's an easy one. David Bowie, no question. When I was 10 years old, I was sitting with my parents in suburban Birmingham, UK, Birmingham, not Alabama. I was watching a show that was on every week on a Thursday evening called Top of the Pops. And this show at that time was a family event too, though, because it had something for everyone. It would have some novelty gimmick act that was probably number one. It would have the coolest rock star at the time. It would have something from a TV contest. It would have a foreign artist maybe, or someone new that you'd never heard of. It was a real leveler. But families used to watch it. It got enormous viewing figures. So we used to sit there. I'd sit with my mom and dad and watch this thing. And I'd probably been watching it since I was about 5 years old or something. Anyway, 1972 was the year that changed my life, and I saw David Bowie performing Starman.
That used to be my nickname, Mohammed Starman. So that's my track.
There you go. And I have to say, it was one of those things, it wasn't just me. It was a lot of people of my age and a little older across Britain who saw that. And there was something about it that was otherworldly. Truly, his performance, the way they looked, the fact that he was singing about aliens and that he was dressed in this particular way, wearing makeup and putting his arm around the guitarist Mick Ronson on national TV with everybody watching. There was something about that moment that just changed everything. And for me, I before that, I'd wanted to be a magician when I was a little kid. Then I wanted to be an astronaut. Then I wanted to be David Bowie. No question.
Didn't know what time it was and the lights were low. I leaned back on my radio. Some cat was laying down some get it on rock and roll, he said. Then the loud sound, it seemed to fade. Came back like a slow voice on a wave of phase. That was no DJ, that was hazy cosmic jive. There's a starman waiting in the sky. He'd like to come and meet us, but he thinks he'd blow our minds. And there's a starman waiting in the sky. He told us not to blow it, 'cause he knows it's all worthwhile. He told me, let the children use it, let the children use it, let all the children boogie.
Wow. It's funny, in the UK, there must have been that moment where in the US there was like the Beatles on Ed Sullivan. So probably the same equivalent.
Well, obviously the Beatles, had I been a little older than I am, then I'm sure it would have been the Beatles, yeah.
Did you ever, I'm sure you met Bowie over the years.
Yeah, I did. When I first met him, I was 20 or something, I guess. And he was still one of my superheroes. And honestly, I can say this with my hand on my heart, that now he's still one of my superheroes. But I did get to know him very well. We hung out and spent quite a lot of time together. And when I first met him, I was a little afraid, because meeting your heroes, yeah, everybody said it, but it's really true. You don't want them to let you down, do you? I would have been perfectly happy keeping him as a picture on my wall, you know? But he didn't ever let me down. Actually, he was sharp as a razor, funny, really self-deprecating, and highly intelligent, super cultivated, cared very deeply about art, of course, music, and people. And so I really connected with him over all of those things. And he taught me some things, I think, actually. Maybe I taught him a few things from obviously being younger and where we were coming from and what it was. And that's the people that are still great until they're gone, like David was, always have a finger on what's going on. Andy Warhol always had a finger on what's going on. David Bowie always had his finger on it too. And it's not copying. You never want to follow what people are doing who are new, but you want to understand where it's come from and what's good about it. So you might just want to borrow a kick drum sound, or you might just want to take a mood, or you might want to just take it in and say, okay, we're going to do better than that. But either way, you've got to understand it, and he really did.
Did you guys ever consider even working together?
Well, yeah, of course, we talked about it. It never happened, sadly. I would love to have done. We worked together on shows. We played a bunch of stadiums with David on a tour. I think it was called the Glass Spider Tour. Not his best album, but we had a lot of fun together. We didn't make a record. But yeah, it would have been great. I tell you what, I wish. If I'd had a phone then. This was long in the distant past. But once David was over at my house and we were going to go out for dinner somewhere, and I'd invited Simon. I said, come, well, David and I are just going to go to dinner with a few people in there. So he came over, and the two of them were together in my living room, and we were just chatting about things. For some reason, the song Inchworm came up, and David said, oh, I love that. And Simon said, yeah, me too. One of them started singing. It's a duet. And so the other one started singing too. I can't remember who was singing the Inchworm and the 2 and 2 is 4, 4 and 4 is 8. But it was the most incredible sound. Just some angelic happening right there in my living room. I wish I had that on audio, video, of course, anything, because it's the only time I ever heard exactly how their two voices sounded together. All a cappella, of course. And it was pretty extraordinary because they both have such distinctive tones they managed to get through 2 minutes of the song and then just burst out laughing.
Inch one, measuring the marigolds. You and your arithmetic, you probably go far. Inch one, measuring the marigolds. Could it be you'll stop and see how beautiful they are? 2 and 2 are 4, 4 and 4 are 8, 8 and 8 are 16, 16 and 16 are 32. Inch one, measuring the marigolds. You and your arithmetic, you probably go far.
Oh no, it's in my mind as clear as a bell. If I could just fish it out of my head and project it, you know.
And plug it into the iPod. Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, talking about Bowie, there's another gentleman, his name is Iggy Pop, that I think you admire
I
as well.
couldn't admire him more. David Bowie was the person who, when I was a kid, introduced me to lots of things in life, and that's how we all discover, I guess. I learned about Lou Reed and the Velvet Underground, and subsequently Andy Warhol. So Iggy Pop. I loved the album Raw Power when I was growing up, but one song always comes to mind to me when we talk about, well, what excites you? What makes you feel good? What puts you in a good mood? Lust for Life. It's an incredible album, and this song just has that energy that you sometimes can't translate it any other way aside from live music, and he captured it. Well, take a listen to it.
I'm worth $1 million in prizes. Oh, in my torture film. Drive a GTO, wear a uniform, a line of government loan. I'm worth $1 million in prizes. Yeah, I'm through with sleeping on the sidewalk. No more beating my brains. No more beating my brains. With the liquor and drugs. With the liquor and drugs. Well, I'm just a modern guy. Of course, I've had it in the ear before. Could have a lust for life. Could have a lust for life. I got a lust for life.
I don't know, it's very difficult, but how would you describe yourself in 3 songs? But let's make it a bit more complicated. Let's describe yourself in 2 songs. Who are you? And in 1 song that's not a Duran song, that describes for you Duran.
Wow, that's really, really, really complicated. So describe myself. Well, one of them, for sure, would be Kraftwerk, the robots.
That must have such a huge influence on you.
Well, they did, absolutely. They were first. I always love people who are first. Actually, the first album of theirs I got was Trans-Europe Express, but the first song I ever heard was Autobahn. When I was very young then, and I remember being struck by, what the hell is that? It didn't really sink in that much. I didn't buy that album, but then Trans-Europe Express I did buy And it's one of the albums I've played most in my life.
I was just listening today on a train from Paris to London. It's the perfect track.
Well, yeah, that or Trans-Europe Express. I mean, that's another one that meet Iggy Pop and David Bowie. Yeah, they're hugely influential, and I can only ever thank them for the joy that they have brought to me and many, many, many other people, but the inspiration. Amazing. And I love that they sort of took on that persona of wanting to all be the same and wanting to be robotic, and that's why the robots, but actually could be any one of their songs, really. Trans-Europe Express is one of my favorites. All those albums, Autobahn, Radioactivity, Man Machine, Trans-Europe Express, Computer World, they are spectacular. And anybody who hasn't understood that from whichever generation, doesn't really matter how old you are, it still sounds incredible.
Timeless.
And that's what I always think about music too, you know. It can be timeless if you make it right in the first place. Somebody said something to me some months ago about our sound, said, can't believe how modern your first album and your second album still sound. And I said, well, thanks, I'm glad you didn't say the opposite. But at the same time, what they were trying to be very polite and complimentary, I said, well, it's the way they were built, because I don't know, it was just an instinct at the time. There was a lot of sounds that were on everything, and I never wanted to use any of them. If you want to survive and stand out, you have to have your own identity so that it doesn't age with everybody else. And I think Kraftwerk had that in truckloads.
It's funny you say that, because if you listen to music from different eras, decades, and you hear a certain element that succeeds, sonically speaking, and it just becomes copy-paste in every other thing. I mean, let's take autotune today. You know, they kind of appeared really in the 90s with Cher, but that really got traction in 2010s, and it's a foundation now. Who knows, in 10, 20 years, we look back, it's that period, which it probably most likely is.
Certain sounds do define periods as much as songs, no
Exactly.
question. And sometimes people don't even know what it is. For example, the Lindrum, the TR-808 Roland drum machine, which I first used this drum machine, which probably is a little dull for some people, but for those geeks out there like me, it's fine. This is very significant because this drum machine I used in 1981-82 on the Rio album, specifically on the song The Chauffeur. There's a little bit of the drum machine on Hungry Like the Wolf, Lonely in Your Nightmare, other tracks on the album. That drum machine was new then, and it took a long time before hip-hop really kicked in. Not old-school hip-hop, the new hip-hop. And virtually all the hip-hop songs used this rhythm box, the TR-808. and it became and is known as the sound of hip-hop. But this was a decade or so later.
And the story, you know why it happened, is because 10 years later, the actual hardware became desolate and not desirable anymore and cheaper. So it ended up in secondhand shops, and then they could buy it. Yeah. And it's funny you bring that up. I had one of the conversations with Jamie from The Kills about that, about like how today kids produce music from an iPhone app, right?
Well, I think economics played a big part in it. You know, it's like kids with music are very resourceful, and you use what's around you. And at that time, I mean, you could almost go as far as to say one of the reasons why guitar music was so, like that kind of like raw guitar music was so big, you could almost blame it on eBay. Because, you know, you just use what's cheap and around you. You could buy a guitar for $120, easy. Amplifiers, all those kids that had got into like Daft Punk and shit and all this stuff in the previous decade, Chemical Brothers, they'd all got rid of their amps and guitars and everything. And you could buy all this stuff dirt cheap. There was no value to a guitar you could buy all this stuff on eBay for next to nothing. And now kids it's not, you know, do you remember back then, 2002, how much was a laptop? Probably around about $1,000. Still is, you know. It was like you couldn't do anything on a laptop in 2002 unless you were a banker. And now it's like you couldn't start a fucking band with guitars and basses and drums unless you were a fucking banker. When we did Heart of a Dog, I wrote that fucking beat on a $3.99 MPC app on my phone. You know, it's like, of course, that's the kind of resourceful music of kids today. They're just making the most of what's around them. That's cheap.
Yeah, but it's interesting about guitars. Sometimes people say to me, oh, you don't like guitars because you're a keyboard player and you don't really, you always want things to be more electronic. Couldn't be further from the truth. I grew up on guitar music. Yeah. Everything I loved was sort of glam rock at the beginning and even the stuff my parents used to listen to, the Beatles and whatever. It was all guitar driven. I first started to learn how to play music on a guitar. I was never very good, so I was very happy that synthesizers became my thing. Yeah. But a guitar is as extraordinary an instrument as a piano or a synthesizer or drums, bass, or all the other organic instruments too. And there's things you do with a guitar that you would never do with a keyboard. And so I love guitar-driven things. Funny enough, at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, one of my favorite moments was this band Judas Priest. Heavy metal, you know, not my thing at all. But when they came on, and there was 3 guitars, I think, the energy of it, though, was so amazing. You couldn't help but just smile and say, yeah, that's rock. Recently, the Kate Bush song, Running Up the Hill. How amazing is that a whole new generation, a whole world is out there for this song that is decades old, that is a genius piece of music. And I rarely use that word, but for Kate Bush, I'll use it anytime because she's another one of my heroines. I think she's quite extraordinary. And I'm so happy that people have discovered it through Stranger Things. I did hear a funny comment back from someone who worked with her saying, we just got a call from a super cool young producer saying, I really want to work with that new girl that you have, Kate Bush, who just... of course. Yeah. Because it sounds so modern too.
Oh my God, I love that. Yeah. The art of rediscovering, and how beautiful is that? And I mean,
I love Kate Bush.
Kate Bush, Sade, like two enigmas with timeless sound that constantly gets rediscovered.
Well, Kate was incredibly inventive and
Have you ever met? Have you ever
beautifully-
worked?
No. Actually, funny enough, I've not met her. No,
Wow.
I
So
did.
she was
I-
a
I-
recluse back then.
Well, I don't know about what it
Yeah.
all is, but I went to her only 2 concert tours in the UK. One when I was, I think, 16, and then the other one recently she played Hammersmith, and it was just beautiful, amazing, extraordinary, as you would ever want her to be. And you know, that stuff doesn't happen that often. I have most of her records. I've always loved her inventiveness. Her and Peter Gabriel, who she did collaborate with a little. I think they were both on the same trajectory in a way. But yeah, those two, between them, invented a lot of things. And so I couldn't be happier that the strangeness of strange things. Yeah.
The strangeness of Stranger Things. Second track, Who Are You?
Who am I? Oh, God. Well, it's definitely not the Who song. Who am I? Well, oh gosh, that's a difficult one because I think that there's so many songs that represent different things. Not that I'm particularly astrologically defined, but I am triple Gemini. So there's at least 6 of me. So yeah, rising sign and first moon, I'm afraid.
A lot of keys.
So I'm told. Yeah, one more finger than I have on that hand. But it depends on the moment. You know, I suppose the way that I look at things is, how can I make something different happen unless what's already happening is perfect? That's not that often. I wish it were a little more often. So I'm curious. I like to find ways around things. I like inventiveness. I'm attracted to people, to quote an Apple billboard, who think differently.
There comes the tech.
But I actually love that campaign. I think that was one of the cleverest slogans in years. So it depends which way. We could go down a river on that one. It'd be the River Styx probably, but we could say Stravinsky's The Rites of Spring. Take any section of that. That's the first time I ever heard that. I was speechless. And I didn't hear it when I was a kid. I heard that when I was in my 20s sometime and just thought, someone was doing that? So classical music can easily do that to me. I'm very affected by sound and movement of sound and what it does. That's in a way, soundscapes is what I try to make. And so I often reference classical music. Chopin's Nocturnes, one of the most played things for me ever. It doesn't matter what mood I'm in, it always puts me in a better mood.
when you hear those things, or when you for the first time heard that, do you hear it as like the overall composition, or do you directly go into, like an artist, dissecting what did the artist do?
Usually I just listen to the beauty of it. There are artists I have dissected. I'll confess that some of the things that Prince did early on, I was so stunned by how modern they sounded and thought, what the hell has he done? And so I figured them out just for my own benefit, because it almost annoyed me he was so clever. And he really was.
Oh, it's Prince.
Yeah. I mean, those are some of the most inventive, and I'm using that word too often, but the truth is it means a lot.
The male Kate Bush.
Well, that's Peter Gabriel for me. But Prince, you know, he had Jimi Hendrix, Sly Stone, James Brown, all wrapped up in a package with this modern vision for lyrics and songwriting, and so prolific. I saw him play a lot of times, and I have to say some of the best shows I've ever seen. But then there's other people. Look, Laurie Anderson, Oh Superman. There you go. There's one, Oh Superman.
Hello? This is your mother. Are you there? Are you coming home? Hello? Is anybody home? Well, you don't know me, but I know you, and I've got a message to give to you. Here come the plane. So you better get ready, ready to go. You can come as you are, but pay as you go, pay as you go.
Another song that the first time I heard it, I just thought, what has she done? Where has that come from?
I envy artists, in any medium, who manage to create out of nothing, and they have a blank canvas, and then these ideas to create something like that.
If any of us knew where creativity or inspiration came from, we would bottle it and sell it. It's not possible to say what it is. It can be a newspaper headline. It can be falling over in the street and hurting yourself. It can be a phone call. It can be an electric shock. It can be a bottle of wine. It can be a person often. But it's impossible to say when those dots connect and you really do get power from it. But it's not very gratifying when you don't get it. You can spend days hunting for treasure and no truffles.
Third truffle.
Third truffle.
What track defines Duran? That's not a Duran track for you. That is a third truffle.
I'm not sure whether it was us who described ourselves as this or the media. I think probably us. It sounds a bit too PR for the media. But it was a cross between punk rock and electronics. And that, I suppose that is what we tried to make the hybrid of. So I Feel Love by Giorgio Moroder and, of course, Donna Summer releasing the record, Giorgio Moroder writing and producing with her. That, to me, is the most important dance track ever. It doesn't matter. There's lots of others I can pick on. Amazing things, slightly more obscure things. No GDM, I love. Precious Little Diamond, all those kind of things. It's easy to pick on them, but the track that did it all, that invented electronic dance music for me, and I think most of the rest of the world, I Feel Love. Incredible. So that is a big part of my DNA for sure, and Duran Duran's DNA. The Sex Pistols, Pretty Vacant. The energy, the madness, the craziness, the rawness is sort of super important.
There's no point in asking, you'll get no reply. I'll just seen it, but I don't decide. I got no reason, it's all too much. You'll always wonder how too much. Oh, we're so pretty, oh, so pretty. We're vacant, oh, we're so pretty, oh, so pretty.
And then at the same time, we were also listening to Chic.
Our friend Nile. Shout out to our friend Nile, the legend.
Hey, Nile.
Hey, Nile.
And you can pick any of them. Really, Good Times is by far the most obvious one. That is probably one of the most played records in the world. He must be approaching Happy Birthday at this point. Or White Christmas, you know? I mean, really? Actually, if you go deep into the Chic catalogue or the Sister Sledge catalogue,
Endless.
scary how good.
It's unbelievable.
Niall, obviously, we've known for rather a long time, and he's been a big part of our careers, and I thank him daily for that. But you know, I've never ever seen a musician in my life plays their instrument as if it's connected to their body, meaning there's no difference at all. It is part of him, and he is that guitar. And it's hard to explain unless you really watch him and see what happens. But the joy that the guitar brings to him and that he gives to the guitar, it's such an incredible relationship. I honestly never seen anything like it. Just watch his face and watch him playing the guitar and correlate the two is all I can say to anybody who hasn't figured this out yet. Remarkable. And those records, you can literally pick on any of them. We Are Family, what as good a pop song as great a disco song as you're ever gonna get. I Want Your Love actually is one of my personal favorites. Fantastic.
I want your love. I want your love. I want your love. I want your love. Do you feel like you ever want to try my love and see how well it fits? Baby, can't you see when you look at me? I can't kick this feeling when it hits. All alone in my bed at night, I grab my pillow and squeeze it tight. I think of you and I dream of you all of the time. What am I gonna do? I want your love. I want your love. I want your love. I want your love. Sometimes don't you feel like you never really had a love that's real?
He told me that story once, and I'm sure he said it many times before. The Diana Ross I'm Coming Out track, how it all came together. Do you know the story?
No, another one about Le Freak. But
Well, the freak, yeah, no, we know that one too. But this is back in the 70s, of course. He was like, if you wanted to hear good music, like new music, you would go to the gay clubs. If you want to hear really, really good, like the real stuff, you would go to the trans clubs, like where the transvestites are. And he must have been in the late 70s, and he goes to the bathroom in a pissoir, and he's peeing, and he's framed by these like two, like left and right, gorgeous, tall, black transvestites peeing next to him in the pissoir. And they're basically Diana Ross lookalikes. In that period, him and, what was his partner again?
Bernard.
Bernard were in the studio. They were asked by the record label to basically produced a Diana Ross hit record. Because, you know, she came out of the Supremes era and they were trying to redefine, and she was, of course, the queen.
I'm coming out.
And then he was looking, and they didn't know what to do with her. And then he saw this, and it popped into his head. Oh my God, I'm coming out. So he ran outside in the middle of the night to a phone booth, calls Bernard, write this down, listen to this. I just had this epiphany, basically. And that was it. And then I went to the studio, and they're like, we can't pitch this to Diana Ross. Like, the record label was going to fire us, like that. So she came to the studio, and they pitched the idea. And it's until this day the only number one that she ever had.
Wow, well, she should have had a lot more number ones, but you know what? It is a fantastic piece of music.
Unbelievable.
The intro of that.
Unbelievable.
We admire that intro sometimes when we're in the studio together. We say, should we just listen to the intro of that?
Yeah.
Fantastic. No, Niall, yeah, but there you go. Talking about inspiration, where does it come from? Who knew?
Who knew? In a pissoir and a transvestite club. Well, talking about groove, let's talk about groove. Give me another track.
Well, I'm always happy to talk about groove, and literally groove. How about Groove is in the Heart? You know, when that song came out, I thought, wow, this is really, really something. Then a couple of years later, it was sort of a one-off hit. I guess I forgot it a little bit. And I just heard it the other day.
Chills that you spill up my back leave me filled with satisfaction when we're done. Satisfaction of what's to come. I couldn't ask for another. No, I couldn't ask for another. No, that's right. Your groove, I do deeply dig. No walls, only the bridge. My supper dish, my succotash wish.
Sing it, baby.
I couldn't ask for another. No, I couldn't ask for another.
And it was delightful, I have to say. It was a moment in time, wasn't it? But somehow there was something about it that just transcended other dance records at that time. It happens, you know, you get Uptown Funk, or you get, I don't know, any one of those Daft Punk songs, and they just steal a moment. There's something that's magical for that year. There's the Nile Rodgers unbelievable ingredient that his guitar seems to get sampled on endless dance tunes, and they become the song of the summer. But Groove is in the Heart really stuck with me. And actually, we used to use it in Girls on Film. I had sampled it, and I had it on a key, my keyboard, at exactly the same tempo as Girls on Film. And so we'd break the song down with just the rhythm box going dun, 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 dun. And I go, Groove is in the heart. Na, 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 na.
Groove is in the heart. Groove is in the heart. Groove is in the heart.
So it was a lot of fun having it there live, and sounds just as good today as it did then.
Is there a recording of that?
Oh, I'm sure there's probably some horrible thing on YouTube. We never actually recorded it in the studio. It was just a bit of fun. Sometimes we like to work other people's songs into stuff live. It's fun where we've done Lady Gaga things. We actually didn't. One More Time would be a fun one to run into something. We've done Chic things. We had We Are Family, I think, also in Girls on Film at some point. We've had Psycho Killer in there. Actually, I have a real soft spot for Groovies in the Heart.
Is it something to spice it up for you guys or for the audience? Because playing after 40 years certain tracks over and over again must get repetitive and tiring, or never?
Well, I don't know. I guess a lot of our audience really want to hear hits, which we are very happy to provide. But equally, it's just fun. One of the most amazing things that I think we ever did is the first time we worked with Mark Ronson. We had no idea he was a fan, and we'd been approached by some kind of company to do a special event in Paris, in Pigalle, at a small venue, I think called Seagull. His idea was incredibly simple, but so clever. He wanted to take our catalogue, mix it with other stuff, and basically do a DJ set that we played live. You have no idea what an enormous amount of work it became, because we were having to relearn our songs in different keys, different tempos, running things in. We did a song of ours called The Chauffeur, which went into song 2 by Blur because Mark had figured out it was the same chords, so it suddenly speeded up and became song 2. All of these things, and we did 555, all these crazy songs. But it was such an incredible exercise, learning how to do that and doing something that groovy, which for Mark, it was easy. He just did it on paper like his DJ set. But to his great credit, he did also play with us on some of it and had figured out ways to do it. And that was the beginning of our relationship with him that really led to a different period of our career.
We touched on Peter Gabriel, which kind of reminds me of Phil Collins. Obviously, they were in a band together.
Yes. Dun-dun, 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 dun.
I read his biography when it came out. I was just for some reason intrigued. And his chapter about Live Aid was so insane. And like
Well, he's the only one that did both.
Who did both? You guys did Philadelphia, right?
Yeah, which was really sad for me at the time. Well, we really, really wanted to be in London because we're from the
Exactly.
UK. Look, I love America. America has been the kindest country to us, and we spent so much time there, and all my friends and everything. Nothing to do with anything else other than we thought, we're from the UK, we should really be performing in the UK. We were only in Philadelphia because Power Station were on tour at that time in America, and so they couldn't come over to the UK. Power Station was the band that John and Andy had formed with Robert Palmer, Tony Thompson from Chic, and Bernard Edwards produced it. So it all comes around the same circle, but they were in America, and there was the only way we could do it was by us coming over. And Simon and I were recording in Paris, making an album under the name Arcadia, because we'd sort of split the atom at that time.
There was tension in the band.
Yeah, there was plenty of tension for sure. And so we get together the day before for the first time in about 6-9 months and rehearse and think, okay, we got to do this in Philadelphia. And it was okay, we did fine, but it was definitely not our greatest performance. But at that time, View to a Kill is number 1 pretty much worldwide. We're on the bill, I think, one from the end, maybe Mick and Tina were after us.
Wow.
We've been on after all these legends, and people like Led Zeppelin are on early, and so...
That must be so awkward.
Well...
My warm-up band.
Wow, now none of us thought of it like that, but at the same time, it was very odd just trying to pull this thing off. We haven't even spoken in months, and there's a lot of tension. We get on stage together. Then we literally walk on stage, and I have never been so scared in my life.
A huge amount of people.
No, I'm never scared of people. I don't get nervous. I'm fine. I couldn't hear anything.
Oh.
Nothing. I mean, literally nothing. You didn't have in-ear monitors then. You had wedge monitors with just speakers. but there was nothing coming through my speakers. And we'd started the song, and I was playing, listening to the echo of the whole thing, thinking, please, just give me something, otherwise everything is going to be a disaster. And that was for literally half a song. And then it started getting slightly better. But because they had so many artists playing...
They didn't plug the speakers again.
No, it was but it was sort of get plugged in along the way. And if you just were bass drums, guitar, maybe a piano, it wasn't so bad. You could all look at each other. With us, there was sequences, meaning things that go da-da-da-da-da-da-da, that need to be precise, and if that gets triggered wrong, or oh my God, it really was absolutely terrifying. And then finally it kicked in and it got a little better, but even by the end the sound was terrible. It wasn't anybody's fault, it was just one of those days where everyone's trying to do their best. But it's the one time I remember being on stage thinking, why me, why us? But it was also equally an incredible moment in history that we actually did realize at the time. Often you don't realize this, everybody knew. Yeah.
I already freak out if, let's say, the CDJ is something off, or the mixer, someone spilled a drink, and I freak out. I was like, I can't imagine. It's like 500 people in front of me. I can't imagine with 100,000 people and you can't hear.
It wasn't 100,000 people. It was the sort of 2 billion on TV.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. No pressure. But yeah, I guess that you guys were probably like at the peak of like fan mania probably at that time, right? So you were exhausted touring, you were together as a band probably, what?
We hadn't been touring, we toured throughout 1984, but this was 1985, and actually, as I said, we hadn't seen each other for several months, which is the longest time, and it was literally the last show we played together as the original lineup, those 3 songs, whatever it was. That was it. Then we didn't play together again till 2002.
Whoa. Oh yeah, of course, I remember, yeah. Damn. And was it the tension, not to go too much into negatives, but...
No, it's not negative.
Was it just the stress of being within a group, or was it also like drunken-fueled mania?
No, all of it. It was everything. It was, we hadn't stopped for 5 years. We'd been on this roller coaster, and I guess what's the one is it's Space Mountain, you know, where you just, it just kind of slowly goes up and up and up and up. And we finally got to the top. And then, boy, it went down quick. It wasn't quite as terrifying as Space Mountain, but it was equally as difficult to get through as an ordeal, because you had to sometimes close your eyes and just say, no, I'm not doing this. I'm not doing this. Really, I'm not doing this. And we were. It fell apart. It was tensions, personal things. It was exhaustion. It was drugs. It was personal relationships within the band's relationships and the relationships they had with other people. Life gets complicated. We started off as a gang of kids that all had a goal to be together. As soon as someone else comes into that picture, doesn't matter who they are, the dynamic changes. And that's what was going on then. And you know, it also, I wanted to go more towards arts and underground and electronics, where we came from in the first place. John and Andy at that time wanted to go more towards rock, which was the Power Station. And Roger, who was always in the middle of the seesaw, our drummer, he was on both projects and literally sitting there, jumping from one side to the other. And if you actually glued together the Power Station and Arcadia album, it would have almost been the next Duran Duran album. I have to say, I think the Power Station album was really great. I love Robert Palmer. I think there's things on there that are spectacularly good. Of course, I prefer the Arcadia album. No, but meaning, you know, the two of them, between them, if you stuck together Some Like It Hot and Election Day, you would have had the sound of the next Duran Duran album.
Which I guess at this point now, those elements all came together in your most latest sounds and albums.
We've had a journey different than any other band. I guess the standard journey is you either stick together and make it through, or you stick together and make it through with a couple of lineup changes, or you fall apart. We sort of did all of those together. stuck together, had some lineup changes, still stuck together, then went back to our original lineup again, then went back to a slightly different lineup. But what has been constant is really more Simon, John and I, and then Roger, predominantly too, certainly for the last 20 years and the first 5 years. Our vision being working together and what we can make together that we can't make on our own. Anyone in the band is perfectly capable of making stuff on their own. But when you come together, it's a different thing because you're pulling in completely different directions. You're trying to do something that is special, something that is different than everybody else. And you don't always achieve it, but that's what you're striving for. And when you do achieve it, it's worth all of it.
Wow. Talk me through the process when you come together into the studio. Or okay, let's start recording a new record. How does it come about? Like, it's like, hey, listen, guys, you have a group call.
I have no idea.
So it's not like a planned thing. It's like,
no,
you know what? Let's go to the
planned.
studio.
Well, the only thing that's planned is that we all arrive with nothing.
Nothing
a
in the
blank sheet. And then we literally get in. It's proper old school. We all plug in. Yeah, and we jam until we find something that we like. And that something could be anything. It could be a phrase. It could be one little keyboard thing that I played, a motif, a little tiny melody. It could be the bass and drums have just locked into something that we all gravitate towards and say, oh, that's cool. Hold on a minute. Hold on. What we're really good at, because we're a true democracy, I don't. In some ways, I don't believe in democracy. I would love to believe in democracy because I feel that that's the best thing and the fairest thing we have in the world. But they don't usually work because someone is running the democracy. In the band, we actually do bizarrely have a democracy. No one gets to rule this band. Sometimes someone drives something more than someone else, for sure. But the way things work is when we all agree and suddenly everyone goes, yes. And because we've always shared things together, we share the income, we share everything to make sure that our artistic process is pure. If you've got a singer who's earning twice the amount of money as the drummer, you can't do that.
Which was the issue and the big conflict with your nemesis group, Spandau Ballet.
Yes, that is the issue that plagued them. I like all of them. Gary is a dear friend. And Tony, the singer, I also like very much. But it's a sadness to me that their friendship became so difficult because of the differences. However, all I can say, if one person really does do most things, then that is slightly different. When you've got different levels in different songs, look, I might do much more in one song. Simon might do much more in another one. John might do much more in another one. However it works, what we've always said is it'll balance, it's fine. And you know what? We don't want to have those arguments. I'm sure Jagger and Richards would say you're crazy.
Yep, but does it help then at some point to also bring outside producers? We mentioned Nile, Mark Ronson, our friend Errol Alkan on your latest record.
Oh yeah, well Errol Errol's a force of nature.
Played a big role in my life, Errol. Because I used to go every Monday to Trash.
Yeah. Which I never went to. I missed that whole thing. But you know what we all loved about Errol is, one, his love of music.
Yes.
Two, his unbelievable energy. I've never come across anything quite like it in the studio. It's like having some kind of live psychedelic drug in the studio that bounces off the walls and just suddenly you get hit with some of it and you think, okay, you want to go over here. He's something, Errol. But aside from that, he's an absolute sweetheart.
So shout out to Errol over here. Errol,
definitely, no, we do. And we bonded with Errol in an unusual way with the album, because what surprised me, we liked him because we thought, let's make something a little more groovy with a bit of rock in it. Errol came and his perspective was, no, the band's about this, which had some groove, some rock, some whatever, but he wanted to zero in on some things on the first album, the second album, the third album, the fifth album, the ninth album, whatever it all was. He knew the catalogue better than I do at this point, I think. And he just had thought about it and really wanted to create certain things. And I have to say, at first I thought, all right, let's follow this path, but I'm not sure where you're going yet. When I heard what he did with the bass and drums, I thought, okay, now I know where you're going. Because he wanted to deal with the details in a way that you forget sometimes. When you get further into your career, the dark trail behind you becomes more smudged instead of being defined. And Errol dragged the stuff out of that dark trail and he re-inked it so that you could say, here it is. This is what this worked like. And John and Roger had so much fun with him doing the bass and drums because he's the king of dance music from that period particularly, and he gets stuff. Nobody has a better musical knowledge. I have to say, if I ever was on some quiz show about music, I want him on my side.
I love it. Which track shall we play from the album?
Well, let's play one of Errol's. Let's play All of You.
In that we are music lovers, this much we've learned. Two souls among many others, like the sun will burn. I want everything, all of what you do, everything, every night, every day. I want all of you, every now, everything, everything, I want everything, I want
Well, we touched on the subject of drugs, but there's one story I love you told me. In the 80s, you gotta tell me that. The Chateau Marmont story. This is pre-Andre Ballas. This is like 80s Chateau. The dingy, sketchy Chateau in the 80s.
Well, yeah, you're talking about when we used to stay there in the very early 80s, and there was no room service at all. It was really hopeless. I think what you could get at some time in the day, if there was anyone hanging out that was available, you could either get a cheese plate or cheese and meat plate, or you could get a fruit plate. And when I say a plate, they just got it from somewhere local, and they brought it upstairs with on a plastic tray with some horrible plastic thing over it. Or if you wanted drugs, there was a menu.
No.
Not literally.
Literally.
It wasn't printed, but it was, oh, okay, what do you need? Suddenly, someone would arrive with an array of sweets and surprises. It was a different world then. I mean, funny enough, I'm not trying to step out of this in any way because it was amusing, but it wasn't something I was participating in by this time. But for sure, other members of our party thoroughly enjoyed that experience and were very grateful to not have to look any further than
A phone call.
yes.
To the lobby reception. Well, I asked you this the other night when we were talking about what should I play for your Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction, what vibe, and you were like, let's play something groovy, which I loved. I love that answer. But I was like, what if I play? What's your favorite Spandau Ballet track? Should I play some Spandau?
I really like to cut a long story short too. Gary's a clever songwriter. I'm not as big a fan of the ballads as I am of the groovy ones because that's the sort of stuff I like more.
Sitting on a park bench, years away from fighting. I had to cut a long story short, I lost my mind.
But for sure, when we were coming up here, they were an important band in the UK. In America, which is what we had our eye on, we were chasing the Police.
Wow.
We were not. That sounds
I
weird,
was
doesn't it?
about
We
to
were
say.
chasing the Police.
Let's put into context the Police, the band. Sting.
I kind of like the other version. But...
With a fruit plate in your bag.
Hello. It really was, because I think that they were ahead of us. They were just slightly older, and the songs they'd come out with were pretty remarkable. I've always loved Sting as a songwriter. Walking on the Moon, their songs don't get that much better than that.
Walking back from your house, walking on the moon. Walking back from your house, walking on the moon. Feet they hardly touch the ground, walking on the moon. My feet don't hardly make no sound, walking on the moon. Some may say I'm wishing my days away. No way. And if it's a price I pay, some say tomorrow's another day.
There's so many of them. If you really go through that period, Message in a Bottle.
Walked out this morning, don't believe what I saw. 100 billion bottles washed up on the shore. Seems I've never known it being alone. 100 billion castaways looking for a home. I'll send an SOS to the world. I'll send an SOS to the world. I hope that someone gets mine. I hope that someone gets mine. I hope that someone gets mine. Message in a bottle, yeah. Message in a bottle.
That's what we thought. They're ahead of us. And Spandau weren't really there in America. There were lots of other British bands there. I love The Cure. The Cure are still one of my favorite artists.
Whenever I'm alone with you, you make me feel like I am home again. Whenever I'm alone with you, you make me feel like I am whole again.
It's the goth in me, I guess. The Cure, Susie and the Banshees.
Oh, we love Susie.
The Banshees. Oh, no! You see, those early shows that John and I used to go to. Susie. Now that was
that was the real deal.
Yeah, it was. They were proper. That's the real inspiration.
She was part of the Blitz. Were you part of the Blitz?
Definitely not. We were part of Rum Runner, which was the Birmingham branch of something similar to the Blitz.
Birmingham. Even after its radical facelift, it's not a city you immediately associate with glitz and glamour.
At the dawn of the 1980s, there was one nightclub in Birmingham that gave birth to a movement. Extravagance and theatricality were at its heart. Eyeliner, lip gloss and hairspray were its uniform. And that was just the boys.
The club was the Rum Runner and the movement, the New Romantics. What the club needed next was a house band, and it got one, in the shape of Duran Duran.
It was fairly clear that this scene was going to spawn an act that was a true reflection of it. And that's when Duran came along.
The band and the club were as one. When they weren't playing, guitarist Roger Taylor worked as a glass collector, Nick Rhodes as the DJ, and John Taylor was a doorman. The band went from Birmingham backstreet to global superstardom.
Her name is Rio and she dances on the sand.
Simon Le Bon's fondness for yachts was borrowed from club owner Paul Barrow's passion for sailing.
I think that Susie's far more important than anyone ever gives her credit for, because talk about that goth aesthetic that we all love now and that Alexander McQueen made the most incredible career out of, and quite rightly gained the best of his generation. Susie was there before most people. She got all that German 1920s, 30s, Hollywood.
Dietrich,
And madness that came after it, then turned into punk, then turned into goth.
What Susie track shall we play?
Oh gosh, any of them. Spellbound.
Spellbound.
You hear laughter cracking through the walls, you send you spinning. You have no choice. You hear laughter cracking through the walls, you send you spinning. You have no choice. Following the footsteps of a red gold dance, we are entranced. Spellbound. Following the footsteps of a red gold dance, we are entranced. Spellbound, 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 oh, oh. Spellbound, 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 spellbound.
What have you recently discovered in art, in film or music that caught your attention?
Well, there is always something. With art, I look for things that are new, that are going to make me more interested in modern art. But I find myself at this point bizarrely going backwards, because I feel there aren't as many new ideas anymore that are as magical, beautiful, strange as they used to be. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm just tired of looking at modern art. Maybe I've been to too many art fairs, because that is a little draining.
Yeah.
It's nice sometimes when you just see one piece or three pieces on a wall instead of seeing rows and rows.
It's a
of
labyrinth.
walls and walls.
It becomes
Yeah.
one thing, yeah.
I'm not sure what it is that hits the button sometimes. I find myself more drawn to Egon Schiele than ever. I find myself more drawn to Picasso than for many years, who clearly is the number one brand, but still, when you look at it, you think that's why. And I find myself drawn towards Francis Bacon as ever, as much.
You must have met him, no?
Do you know what? I didn't. No. My dear friend Peter Beard, the photographer, always said to me, Nick, you have to meet Francis. You and him are going to get on so well. You really, you're going to become best friends. You have to meet. And I said, oh, I would love that. I'm such an admirer. Yes, we should meet. And this went on for a number of years. I didn't see Peter for a while, and I was touring and everything else. And anyway, it never quite happened. And I'm a little sad I never met him. Can't meet everyone. I've done okay.
You've done.
But
You have got to tell me the top three.
no, but meaning I would have loved to have met him, because I think he was just remarkable. One of the greats of not just his generation, but actually ever.
Yeah.
The things that he invented and the things that he created that have influenced somebody else, so many other people. There's lots of painters that I know, some of who will remain nameless, but some of their best paintings are copies of Bacon's.
A sound of an era that gets replicated. Same thing within the visual arts. There's a certain style.
Oh, definitely. But Bacon, for me, look, I'm not a big fan of some of the Freud paintings. I accept that he's technically incredible, but it was always Bacon for me for the visual of what I liked. So I'm going back more towards classics than towards modern things. Every art fair you can go to, you can find someone who usually the name has disappeared within years. But it's harder to find things that are truly original. And if I do see that, then that's what I tend to go for. I bought a few things from artists over the last decade.
What's your personal most prized possession?
I mean, look, I don't want to sound too contrived about it, but actually just health and my mind is what I value the most of all. Possessions, I have lots of lovely, beautiful things. Yeah, of course, there are things. There's some paintings I have that I really, really love. Actually, gifts that people have given to me that mean a little more. I have a little $sign painting that Andy Warhol gave to me in 1982, and he said, "Oh God, gee, Nick, oh God, you're starting to earn some money now. That's really great. Here's some more." So yeah, things like that.
You also mentioned Jean Cocteau, and I was just telling you the beautiful Schiaparelli exhibition as well, and that period of artistic exchange in the early 20th century. Tell me.
I search for ideas and inspiration anywhere I can find it, and I think you'll find that's also true for almost every artist, whether they choose to admit it or not. I often look into the past because there are so many things in our history that people now forget about that need to be revived or reimagined. And by that, I don't mean making a modern copy of a piece of art or a piece of music that somebody made necessarily. I mean looking at the way they thought and the way that they perceived life. Paris in the 1920s and 30s is often a source of exploration for me, or the characters that were there then, if you really think about it, Cocteau, Picasso, Duchamp, Picabia, the list goes on and on and on. Stravinsky, Leon Bast, Schiaparelli, Chanel. It must have been a small circle, but the most perfect circle. A lot of those people really did invent the 20th century. And so even though their language was very different than the language we all know now, you have to understand that they didn't have any technology. They were completely analog, but they were on fire. And so, yes, rather than maybe looking at a couple of things that I saw last week at an art fair, I do find myself looking back to find things that have historically been proven to be quite remarkable.
Wow. What's your go-to falling in love or heartbreak song? First thing that pops in your head.
Well, If You Want Me to Stay, Sly and the Family Stone. I think that is one of the sexiest songs ever written. There's a beauty to it. There's a marvel about it that not many records have ever had. And at this point on the album Fresh, this is, for me, when Sly was at the height of his powers. He was Prince times 10, ahead of everyone, and clearly, completely out there on his own.
If you want me to stay, I'll be around today to be available for you to see. I'm about to go, and then you'll know for me to stay, I got to be me. You'll never be in doubt, that's what it's all about. You can't take me for granted and smile. Count my days, I'm gone. Forget reaching me by phone, because I promise I'll be gone for a while. When you see me again, I hope that you have been the kind of person that you really are now. You got to get in straight. How could I ever be late when you're my woman taking up my time?
Every time I hear that track, it just sends a shudder down my spine, and I think, wow, how on earth did anyone ever make it? And those are the things, again, that thrill me. I could have picked In Time off that same album, which is also just unbelievable. But Sly Stone, for me, I guess he was my intro to funk. Obviously, James Brown, which we all knew a little as soon as we were born, I think. But Sly Stone, he really influenced the Notorious album. That's where we kind of look for everything, particularly the horns and the funk of it. And when I said to Nile, I love this album, he kind of smiled and went, oh yeah, sure, you've discovered that, I mean, meaning it's something he could have for breakfast. And so he said, all right, yeah, let's go. And that's, for me, where the Notorious album started. And it wasn't just me. It was me, John, Simon. We were all in this same boat on this journey where somehow we discovered Sly. And I was still in my early 20s, but I didn't know about it when I was a teenager. I wasn't in America. It wasn't on radio in the UK. I'd probably heard a couple of songs, the ones that everybody knows. That was the album.
Well, that's probably the sexiest song for you then. So,
well, there's a lot of other songs. Look, I could also say,
give us another one. Why not?
Why not? Well, sexy songs, groovy songs.
Yes, you love groovy, sexy.
I love Blondie.
Yes, we all do.
I love
Give it to me.
Heart of Glass.
Yes.
Come on, it's obvious. Actually, I would say Heart of Glass. But Heart of Glass.
Wow.
I like Heart of Glass. I think it's beautiful, Blondie, crazy, Debbie's ironic lyrics, New York City, early 80s, post-punk, disco, Studio 54 without the fuss. What can you say? She's so underrated, Debbie. I love that period in New York. Heads, my favorite American band aside from the Velvet Underground and Blondie, sort of all equal to me. But Talking Heads, they have so many great songs that are not even known by people. I would advise anyone who dearly loves modern music to listen to the first 5 Talking Heads albums.
And I would advise our listeners to listen to my interview with David Byrne as well, if you haven't already.
Definitely. He's one of the smartest people in music.
Yeah.
He's one of the coolest people in music, and he's one of the most important people in music. Those albums are remarkable, and I used to sit listening to those thinking, wow, okay, where are you going next? And if you don't know where an artist's going, that's what makes it cool. If you sort of think, oh, we're going to get another album like the last one, that's dull to me. And David Byrne, never guilty. Like Peter Gabriel, Kate Bush, and Explorer. I could pick on any of them. Once in a lifetime, the big hit, why not? But I also love Air. Doesn't Air sound good and feel good?
That's why I named this podcast Are We on Air? It's air, it's light, it's fluffy, it's intangible.
Air, let's have that.
It's sexy. Sexy boy.
Where is that protection that I needed? Hey,
track. Oh. Well, Nick, to wrap up our little chat, if your life would be a movie, what song would play in the end credits?
Well, it would be so easy to say No Regrets or My Way, wouldn't it? But no, I think All Tomorrow's Parties by the Velvet Underground.
On that note, let's have another glass. Let's have dinner, shall we?
Let's.
Thank you for being on air with us.
A pleasure.
And what costume shall the poor girl wear to all tomorrow's parties? A hand-me-done dress from who knows where to all tomorrow's parties. And where will she go? What shall she do when midnight comes around? She turned once more to Sunday's clown and cry behind the door.
Thank you for tuning in this week. If you want to listen to the full playlist, visit areonair.com or our Spotify channel. You can also find us on Instagram and on YouTube at areonair. And a big thank you to my wonderful team at Studio Neu. I'm Armand Nafei, and I'll speak to you soon.